Hello, everyone. I'm Scott English, Executive Director of the American Philatelic Society. Thank you for joining me to announce the 2023 winners of the Star Route Awards. The Star Route Awards replaced our old chapter newsletter competition. What we wanted to do was broaden the competition to include club websites so that we could highlight those folks that are doing an exceptional job. And for those folks out there who maybe are just getting started with a website or a newsletter, just took it over from someone else, or really just need some guidance, we wanted to be able to give you some feedback, so to give you some things to think about. The Star Route Awards were named for the Star Route, which is the contract postal units that were set up by the U.S. Postal Service up until the 19th century, and the what we think they reflect is really an extension of what we do here at the APS and doing outreach to the community, educating your members, sharing news, and keeping people connected regardless of where they are in the world. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is introduce two of our judges, Tom Fortunato. And Tom, if you wouldn't mind, share a little bit about yourself for the audience.
How you doing, everyone? My name is Tom Fortunato. I'm here in Rochester, New York. I was one of 5 judges for the website competition. I'm a lifelong member of the APS and also the ATA and a number of other philatelic societies. I've been working on websites since the very early days, about 97, 98 is when I started getting involved in websites. And I really liked the idea of linking my main interest, philately, with websites. So I started putting together a web page for my local club, the Rochester Philatelic Society, and it kind of went on from there.
I was going to ask Tom one quick question. Tom, I understand you're working doing relations for a big event. I can't remember what it's called. Could you help me with that?
Boston 2026, that's the next big international show here in the United States. I have the pleasure of being the person in charge of PR and press releases and all good fun stuff like that, promoting the show. So I hope you will all remember that. It's only about 2 years away, and we want you to keep that in mind for the future.
I wanted to make sure we got in the Boston 2026 plug
Thank
while
you
we
for
were
the
doing
plug.
this as well. Okay, Matthew Healy, who worked on the newsletter side of things. Matt, introduce yourself to the folks.
Hi, I'm Matthew Healy, and Tom, I was one of 5 judges who took a look at the 30 or so entries in the newsletter competition. We spent quite a lot of time reading pretty much every single number that was sent in, and saw some incredible work being done all across North America. My own background is as a writer for about 15, 20 years about stamps for Lynn's Stamp News, for the American Philatelist, for the New York Times, and occasionally some other publications. I currently edit the newsletter for the APS Writers Unit 30, and I'm about to begin editing the Revenue Journal for the UK-based Revenue Society. I love stamps. I've been a lifelong collector. I'm a life member of the APS, and I see a lot of opportunities here to give back by helping other people improve their game if they want to, and working as part of a team to bring out the best in everybody's potential and try to help the hobby thrive.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Tom. So just for folks watching this, what I want to do is let you know that if you submitted your website or your newsletter for judging, you will get a very specific feedback form. Our conversation today is going to be a little bit more general. I wanted to talk first about the process of deliberation and evaluation, and then second to that is some good tips from our 2 experts and our 2 judges in sharing with you ways that you might want to think differently about how you're approaching a newsletter or a website. So with that, Tom, let's start with you. Can you give us a little bit of the deliberative process that you went into with the jury to look at the websites that were submitted for judging?
By all means, we had 34 contestants that we reviewed. Each of us judged independently those 34 entrants. Probably took about an hour, hour and a half, or a little longer on each to take a good look at the website, taking a look at all aspects of it. The contest and competition was really broke everything down into 2 components: the content of a website and the design of a website. and broke everything down from that. Part of our process is, first off, why does your group, or why does any group or organization have a website? And you really want to promote your organization through that website, your collecting interest, your specialties. Big thing is you want to gain new members from that website. So keep that in mind when you're putting your content together. And of course, you want to keep your current members informed about the programs and services that you offer. Also about the website, you've got to remember, compared to the newsletters, the website, you can have anybody knocking at that front door. It can be a person of any age from any part of the world. You've got to remember that. And so why is someone visiting your website? Well, the person already has an interest, perhaps, in philately. They're checking you out to see if there's some possible interest in joining or considering membership. The person could also be a current member. They're looking for updated content, what's coming up next, what's our group doing. And I guess thirdly, that person can have absolutely no background in philately at all. They have just inherited something or know of somebody that collects, and they're just looking for some information about what it is that they have. So those are the three categories I think that most of us agree people are looking at to take a look at a website, and that's their need. So really matching the interest of that viewer, whoever he or she may be, from wherever that person may be, with your content is probably key and most critical for a website.
Matthew, let's talk a little bit about the newsletters as well.
So a lot of what Tom said applies to the newsletter category. We took about, I guess, an hour or so each individually looking at anywhere from 2 to 6 issues of each newsletter that were submitted for the competition, depending on the frequency. And in terms of frequency and scope and size of these newsletters, they were all over the place. Some were single pages or 2 or 4 pages. A couple of them went to 60 pages issue. So we tried to get through them and looking at, as Tom said, a variety of aspects that cover both the content and the production, the presentation, the way it's laid out, the use of images, the use of color, the consistency of the typography, things like that. And more than that, newsletters tend to be, they're not quite as public facing as a website in terms of, somebody from wherever can't just log in and look at it. It goes to the membership mostly, but it is the glue that holds that particular community of collectors and members together. And so as such, it not only is disseminating information, news about the club meetings. Some of the newsletters have minutes of the last meeting. Some of the newsletters have new issues from the Postal Service. Some of them have feature stories on whatever somebody wanted to write about that they collect or that they're interested in collecting. But some of them really did a great job of just giving a sense of the community that they support, that they reflect. And that was really heartening to see, because I think there's an incredible enthusiasm for philately throughout North America. This was both the US and Canada that these newsletters come from. And that was visible in many of the newsletters. Some of them were a little drier, some of them were very folksy, but all of them really, I think, did a great job of trying to keep together their community, and that's an important role for a newsletter. We've discussed offline where newsletters might evolve in the future, how they might integrate with websites. It was clear from the newsletters that we looked at that some of them were meant to be printed and looked at on paper, while others were formatted in a way that was more conducive to reading on screen. We know that on screen is not every collector's first preference, so I think that some newsletters were visibly struggling with that tension between, are they going to be looked at digitally or are they going to be looked at on paper? And figuring out ways to resolve that going forward to keep everybody happy is one of the challenges that I think we face. And one of the things that the judges group talked about following up with is providing more guidance to not just the 30 or so clubs that entered, but to all of the members, the chapters of the APS, to help them going forward in improving their game and improving how they do what they're trying to do so they can reach their goals and really support their collector communities.
So, I mean, with that part of it, I want to thank the judges both for the website and for the newsletter competition. For those not familiar with the process, typically the way that we have done it in the past is we'd get the submissions and the judges would look in isolation at the product. Now that's good judging, right? You don't want somebody else to influence the way that you view something. And then they were all submitted and we aggregated the scores. What I think was really interesting this year, and the judges really drove this piece of it, was this idea of getting together afterwards and having not just a conversation about why they reflected the way that they did on an individual newsletter or website, but as Matthew alluded to, really starting to get into and then what are we going to do about it? During the pre-show, Matt made a comment that I thought is worth repeating, that it's a two-way learning process, right? You share a little bit about that, Matt and Tom, about why that's true and where we should be going with this.
Sure. Well, like philately, things evolve, and the way that we relate to the technology that's in front of us, whether it be a web page, whether it be in writing through the newsletters, we have to kind of evolve with that. One of the points that we discussed here on the web page side of things was with what's more important. Is content or design more important? And when we got to the design portion in particular, we started discussing how does this website look in with different browsers, and more importantly, how does that look in a mobile setting versus a large screen that most of us are more used to. And the point that was brought up most, and we agreed, is we have to think about that entire community that's moving from that big screen that I'm looking at right now to the smaller screen on the phones and on tablets, and making a website that's more appealing to that audience as well. That's something that we all on the website need to think about more and move in that direction, because society is becoming more mobile and we have to go along with that flow.
I mean, this was the first time that I was asked to help judge the newsletters, and the real eye opener for me was the depth and breadth of involvement, and I had honestly no idea that there were so many great philatelic newsletters out there, and they each have talent involved in writing and editing and producing them every month or quarter or however often they come out. There's real dedication out there. That was very heartening to me. I mean, everybody talks about how the hobby is fading away and nobody wants to volunteer anymore and nobody gets involved, and that's clearly not true. So that was a real exciting thing to discover for me. And we worked with Nora as we went along to try and fine tune some of the judging criteria, or try and focus on things that we felt were more relevant or more important, and maybe let some other things go by the wayside. But as we were doing that, we thought of things that we could actually go back to. I'll call it the newsletter community, the folks who are making these on a regular basis, and give them some pointers on, this is something you could consider. I'll take the example of embedding video in a newsletter. That's something obviously you wouldn't do for a printed newsletter. It was one of the judging criteria, but in fact, only one of the 30 that we viewed or that we reviewed had the practice of embedding a video in each issue of their newsletter. Obviously to be viewed on a tablet or on a computer. It was kind of an interesting idea and something I personally had honestly never thought of doing. But I said, why not? These weren't just random videos they were embedding. There was a specific philatelic angle to it, and there's a growing amount of video content relating to philately out there. Everybody knows Graham Beck, but he's only one of several people doing that. And why shouldn't that be shared with your audience? It's a good way to get people to get engaged online. There are a lot of collectors out there who are only online. They don't have even a printed catalog in their house. Let's meet them where they are, and let's engage them and bring them in. So these are things, as we go along, that we're all going to start to discover and figure out how to incorporate. And I think, as we talked about in the pregame shows, you said there are new paradigms that have to be invented here.
I mean, I think that's a fantastic point. The strength of the APS and the history of organized philately has always been that we were a bottom-up organization. That is, the grassroots really is where innovation came from. I do think that clubs today are struggling a little bit with that because they're figuring out the world post-pandemic. A lot of clubs spent time down. For those of you who don't know, I am a member of probably, the last count was 90 stamp clubs. In fact, I have my renewals starting to roll in now, folks. So for those of you that clubs that I belong to, I will be renewing. I have them organized. I'm better at organizing them than my collection. But there's been that during the pandemic period, some clubs went online, some just went dark. And, this is a number that I reflected to the APS board recently that disappeared. Now that number's starting to build back up again because folks are getting out of the house. They are meeting in person again. But my biggest fear is that we're going to start reverting back to the pre-pandemic mindset when the rest of the world is sort of moving forward with utilization of technology and so forth. And so I think that's a challenge for us. It's also a challenge for our chapters out there and for collectors at large to think about it. Matthew, you used the word a couple of times now, and I want you to expand on that if you could. And that's the idea of community. You made some good points in our pre-show, and I'd like to hear them. I'd like to hear you sort of kick that around a little bit. And Tom, please join in.
The thing about philately is it's a very solitary pursuit for most of us. We have our own personal focus on what we collect and what we do with it, how we study it, how we exhibit it, how we write about it, if we do that. It's a lone wolf type of hobby, but it doesn't have to be. And in fact, I've personally found, and I don't think I'm the only one, when you come out of your shell as a collector and you start going to shows, or you go to your local club, or you get online on a Zoom call or a webinar, you start to learn that there are other people out there. They may not live on your street, they may not live in your town or your country, but they are out there and they have similar interests to you. And sharing your own joy of discovery or your joy of achievement with a community of people who have who are like-minded, share the same affinity, is one of the great thrills of the hobby. And I think one of the themes that comes up over and over again in speeches that you hear from folks who've just been given a Lifetime Achievement Award in philately is that the best thing about the hobby is the friends that they've made and the people that they get to hang out with at shows and so forth. That was very hard to do, as you said, during the pandemic. Everything shut down. We're coming back to it, but as we come back in person, I don't think we're going to let go of the digital element. I know, for example, the Collectors Club, which I'm a member of in New York City and on the board of, is not going to abandon its digital formats, which we adopted in April of 2020. We are going to open a new clubhouse in the spring and start meeting again in person, but we're going to be breaking the old formats. We're not going to do the traditional formal Wednesday evening presentations. We'll do some of them, but we're also going to do daytime things. We're going to do seminars. We're going to do informal talks. We do lunchtime show and tell. We do all sorts of things now. And we'll also continue the regular digital presentations. We've got a program lined up for the next year and a half already. There's a lot of folks out there who want to get involved in that kind of thing. And it's exciting to people to get together with those who share their excitement about their personal collecting journey.
It is a sense of community. Without question, if you are a solitary collector out there, don't involve yourself with clubs or other organizations, are you really missing out? Go to shows, speak to others. You will learn so much more about the hobby and, quite honestly, more about yourself by doing so than just staying at home by yourself.
People have asked, why should I join the APS? What does the APS offer me? And I say, well, I mean, I joined because of something I call fear of doing it all wrong. I'm sitting at home with my collection, and I don't know if I'm doing it right. Am I screwing up? Am I missing something? Am I misidentifying things, or am I, how do I know how to do what I want to do? There aren't so many brick and mortar dealers left anymore in most American cities, but clubs do exist, and opportunities do exist to get together and talk to folks. And that's really one of the great joys of the hobby is to come out of your shell and join a community. And the newsletters, the websites, these are just tools to make that happen. They're not an end in themselves. How we get there.
So, we talk about the traits of a stamp collector, and I boiled them down to four, and that is acquisition, disposition, education, and socialization. And that's the balanced portfolio that any organization, whether it's a local stamp club or the APS, that balanced perspective, we've got to deliver on all four of those fronts. If bear in mind, of those four, two are transactional and two are emotional. And so there's got to be some interweaving between that. That's the permanence piece that we look for all the time, because if you're just buying what you like and maybe you're going to sell them and find out that maybe they're not worth as much as you thought they were, that's going to create a negative, that's going to create a negative impression of the hobby, and you just sort of push the box, of stamps away and you're done with it. But the idea that education and socialization actually enhance your ability to buy and sell stamps is something that we've got to emphasize. Adults tend to be very shy about making new friends. Unfortunately, we're also very good at losing them because of the passage of time. And so, the common thread that ties all philatelists together will eliminate every other difference you have. I've seen it time and again with people who come from different backgrounds, political philosophies, socioeconomic status. It doesn't matter. When you're talking about stamps, we're all the same. And quite frankly, I've seen grown men worth a lot of money and grown men worth not so much money, and ladies as well who are collectors sitting around a pile of stamps and acting as though they were 12 years old again, and digging into a collection for the first time. You can't manufacture that. When you can see it genuinely happening, I think it speaks a lot about the hobby.
You mentioned being 12 years old again, and that is something that I think our websites and our newsletters also need to keep in mind, that we need to do outreach to the next generation. Kids today, and I have two kids, age 9 and 10, and I have grandkids who are not much younger than that, but they don't see stamps coming into the house every day on letter mail the way we did when we were kids. They can't go down to the Woolworths and buy a 10-cent packet of commemoratives from wherever, or the corner newsstand. I mean, you can buy lottery tickets more easily than you can buy stamps now. Um, and that's a problem. Where are they going to get their enthusiasm? Now, I'm very fortunate. Both of my kids are enthusiastic about stamps. They love stamp collecting. They have their albums in their piles, and we went to Gas. I brought them to Gas, and they had a great time at that table that was covered with a big mountain of stamps. And they picked out some stamps all day long. We got back to the hotel room, and they sat up all night sorting them out. But that was a once a year opportunity for them. The rest of the time, they're wholly dependent on me giving them stamps. And that's not something I always have the focus and energy to do with them. And it bothers me that that's their only opportunity and their only exposure. So I think we all need to go back to our communities and work on that. It's not easy. It takes a lot of effort. The problem with a lot of youth stamp clubs where they do exist is that they're not readily scalable. They're dependent on one person out of the goodness of their heart taking the time every week or every month or however often they do it to meet with young people and bring them stamps and share their knowledge. But that is something that I think we can expand on through our newsletters and our websites. We can give young people an opportunity, and adults who are interested in diving in for the first time. It's not just kids, but give beginning collectors an opportunity to find an entree into the hobby at a scalable level. In other words, it's not just one person in the back of one firehouse doing it because they know there are 3 kids in their community. Otherwise, I don't think the hobby has a future. I know I hate to be a naysayer, we all got back into it when we were in our 30s or 40s or 50s because we remembered from our childhood how much fun it was. The kids growing up today, when they reach this age in their 30s and 40s and 50s, won't have those memories. And one afternoon, we were working with a PR agency here in New York City. And one of the women who worked there, who was not a collector, knew nothing about stamps. She called me up because she was on the account. She was working on a couple of our advertisements. She said, wait a minute, do I understand this correctly? I can bring my kids to the Javits Center for the afternoon, and for $20, they can have fun and come home with a whole lot of stamps and learn a whole lot of cool things? I said, yeah. She said, that's incredible. How come you're not telling everybody about this? I said, well, we're trying. But I think there is an openness out there, a receptiveness out there to the joys of the hobby, and parents would love to get their kids involved because it is fun. It's not that expensive. Not everybody has to chase $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 items. For $20, you can have an afternoon's worth of fun and have something to show for it at the end. A lot of parents would love to do that for their kids if they just had the opportunity, if we just show them the way.
And it's up to us to do that.
So
Absolutely.
we're here to help. That's my takeaway from this whole process is this is our chance to reach into that community of energy and enthusiasm and nurture it and help it along, give it the tools or guide it as they improve the tools they have.
So I've got just two more questions, and then we'll announce the winners of this. And I really appreciate you both joining me today. First is just observationally, are there some good tips that we haven't discussed already that we can share with clubs, both on websites and newsletters, that should be a takeaway from this video view?
At least on the website, the one factor I think we judges all agreed to is the importance of your homepage. What you have on that homepage really sets the mood for people to explore and investigate what your organization is all about further. So keep it simple and informative. You'd be surprised a few websites out there that deal with stamp collecting that don't have a single stamp on it as far as an image. That's incredible. Be upfront and make sure you have something that relates to your hobby and your interests there on the homepage. Mention very briefly some of the very basics here. What does your club specialize in? How many members do you have? Are you local or are you an international organization? When and where do you meet? And perhaps most importantly, who do I contact if I have a question about the club in some way? Those are all key pieces of information, along with when was this website last updated? It would be great to have at the very bottom just a quick statement that says last updated on and put in a date, because people do not like stale information. They want to go there, they want to make sure that the information is relevant to what they have questions about, and they also want to make sure that that information is up to date and current. So that's probably the best takeaway that we can give to you. Keep that homepage simple, and then create links to additional pages to provide further information if that person wants to explore specifics a little bit more. And also, don't forget to put a search engine of some kind there on the homepage that make it very easy for people to find that information as quickly as possible to keep them engaged.
A lot of what Tom said applies to newsletters as well. There were a number that didn't really give us a easy way to figure out who the editor is, how do we reach them? If I want to know when the next club meeting is, where's that information? Consistency in presenting the sort of standard information in every issue is important. Some clubs do it excellently, but some need to kind of remember that somebody may want to use this not just as an update of what's going on, but also a reference of like, when's the next meeting and where? Some people know that. If it's a very small club, you call Joe and Joe knows what's going on. But that limits if that information is not in there or not easy to find, it limits the usefulness of the newsletter for doing outreach. Especially if they're printed, they get around, and you leave it lying in a public place like a library or a doctor's office, and all of a sudden you've got a new member because somebody picked it up and they were intrigued and they showed up. But um, readers want to get a sense of their own community, and some of the newsletters I think were a little detached. It was just a listing of new issues from the post office, or it was just a very dry recitation of the minutes of the last meeting. Others, even if their layout wasn't as polished, they really got a sense of the clubbiness of it. You really got a sense that there was a group of people who enjoyed getting together and talking about philately, and that came through, in a very organic way, and you could really feel the community there, and so that was nice. I think that a lot of the newsletters struggle to find content to fill their pages. And that's something I think the APS, or we as a judges group, realized the APS could potentially help with in the future, because by the opposite token, there's a lot of really good content in some of them, that could be shared to a wider audience. It could be syndicated to other newsletters, for example, just because somebody in one town in one state wrote a really good article doesn't mean that their readers should be restricted to that one club. They could be enjoyed on a wider scale. So I think there's more to be done to develop these tools further and to help communities really share with each other and meet up with each other. Distributing the newsletters more widely. I mean, I think that there's no place that I'm aware of where I could go to just browse Stamp Club newsletters from all over the country on a regular basis. There's no digital library of them, I think. If I just want to see what's going on around North America, we that's something else that we could talk about setting up.
I like that idea. You sort of segued into the last question that I wanted to ask, and that is, through this process, what advice do you two have for the APS in terms of helping clubs with their websites, helping clubs with their newsletters?
Probably the best advice I can probably give to fellow webmasters and APS is go out there and explore other websites. See what other people are doing. Just like philatelic exhibiting, take the best of what you see and apply it to your organization and your group. That is probably the best advice that we can offer to you. But go out there and see what other people are doing.
We've talked about in our judges group putting together a guide for how to improve some of the nuts and bolts of production, in terms of the editing and the layout and things like that. Because some of the newsletters, I'll be quite frank, they're not completely living up to their potential, and it wouldn't take much to really elevate them to the next level. But nobody should have to work in a vacuum, and the purpose of an organization like the APS, I think, is to share exactly that kind of know-how with its members, so they don't have to reinvent the wheel on every issue, but they can really benefit from some input and some guidance. So we're putting that together. I think as to the future, we talked a little bit beforehand. Newsletters need to figure out if they're going to be printed or digital. Personally, I think more people are going to have to get used to reading them digitally. And then there are more opportunities for integration with websites and with social media. So I think there's a lot of exciting things that can be done in the future to really bring this into the 21st century. But it's something we're going to have to invent together, because I'm not sure how to do it, and I don't think anybody else is.
So I will, just for everyone's edification, there's a couple of things that I want to touch on. One is a free piece of advice, being the reader of a number of newsletters from clubs around the country. One of the things that I don't know if newsletter editors know that they're able to do is, we have a very rich news section on the APS website, and there are editors out there who take advantage of that by taking a content that we provide on the website and use that for their newsletter. we send that directly, but I want to get a little bit more deliberative about our outreach to the local stamp clubs. I'm revising our chapter report so that I have better and more current information about the officers and the newsletter editors specifically, and I want to build a relationship with them, share some things with them, and then I do think that this event, this type of thing where we get together with some thought leaders and discuss in a little bit more detail, the next time we do this, I want it to be a live event so that we can do a Q&A session with an audience as well. So, this is my pledge to the group and both those who are watching and you two, that we want to, I certainly want, Matthew, I really would encourage us, if we can, get together and work on this idea of creating a very useful manual that would go out that we could share with editors that might make their jobs a little bit easier or help them broaden their skill sets so they can deliver a good product for the club, because I do think they can be very effective outreach tools. So with that, I want to thank both of you. I want to say thank you to all of the judges. This year's Star Route Awards process has been probably one of the most productive to date, and I think it's in part to the great work that you all have done, and the great content that we're getting from the clubs to even just have these conversations. So I want to encourage everybody to start thinking a little bit about how they do their newsletter. And now we're going to go to the section where we introduce all of the winners. So I want to congratulate the clubs that won awards, and we want it to be both encouragement and highlight the great work that's going on out there. But at the same time, we want to be a resource for those editors and clubs that want to step up their game. So with that, Tom, Matthew, thank you so much for being with me today, and I really appreciate it. And we will see you all soon. Take care.